Are you ready? Well, guess what? I am. This is episode 28 of the Rich Relationships podcast, and this month we're talking about our relationship with food using the small group book, Freedom from Food. And so today, our episode is called Fasting for Freedom. Freedom? Fasting? Oh no. Here we go.
You know, this is a little bit odd, especially with a week out from Thanksgiving, that we are going to be talking about fasting, which is the total opposite of what people will probably be thinking about at this particular time of the year, especially going into Thanksgiving. So fasting, okay, this is going to be challenging.
Well, it's not Thanksgiving Day yet.
No, it's not yet, but leading up to it is not something that you would naturally be thinking about, though.
Well, the reason why fasting is such an important part of our walk with God is because the Bible tells us in Matthew 17 that this kind can only come out through prayer and fasting. And so when we're talking about freedom from food, which is talking about food addiction and serial dieting, last week you were talking about how changing was hard and it was difficult. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I thought that it was very appropriate that the next couple of chapters in the book, the last chapter in the book, is designed to teach you about how. And how we change is through fasting. I kind of mentioned it in the other episode, in episode 27. We're talking about our relationship with food as well. But this week we're talking about fasting because there are certain things in our life that the only way we are going to lose control over our life is by spending some time in prayer and in fasting. And there are different types of fast, and we're going to talk about that as well. But just talking about why fasting is so important is what we're going to be doing during this episode.
You know, most people would naturally not think of fasting as a relationship topic on a particular show like we do about relationships with people, but it was really important that you wanted to address this.
Well, because our first relationship, and we say it all the time, that in order for any relationship to work, it has to have a solid foundation. And our relationship with God is the most solid foundation we can build anything on. And while God is not visible, He's a spirit and He lives and moves and breathes on the inside of us. The way we tap into that intimacy with God is through reading and fasting and praying and worship. And so most of us, we talk about worship all the time, and we kind of understand that, and we all read the Bible and do some type of a devotional. But fasting is one of the spiritual disciplines that we have kind of put off for January. And what I believe and what I've learned is that when we begin to practice a lifestyle of fasting, it really teaches us and it empowers us to walk in discipline, and it helps us to learn to delay gratification and not give in to our appetites.
You know, sometimes people won't even think about fasting in a normal practice, mm-hmm. You know, unless there's something specific going on, like you mentioned, something at the medical. First of the year, or something medical. That's what you normally think about it. But in the context that you're talking about it is from that we're talking about it is from a spiritual discipline to practice in your life that will help you with your relationships, not only with food, but with people as well.
Yeah, and it also helps you with your conversation, because a lot of times there's so much noise. There's noise on the radio and on television, in our head and in books, and even with our appetites, that the only way you can really begin to make some permanent changes is, and especially when people are talking about transitioning from the standard American diet, which is the SAD diet, into a plant-based lifestyle, there's a big pull between what's in your body right now and what you want to put into. Because we were just talking about this. We were preparing our dinner for tonight, and you're talking about one of your friends saying he's been trying to change to a plant-based lifestyle.
To not eat meat at all.
Right, but it's hard. And the reason why it's hard is because your body is filled with bacteria. And then there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. And the bacteria that digest animal products is different from the the bacteria that would digest fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, and seeds. And so what fasting does is it gives your body that time to kind of rest and flush out all the things that you don't want to feed. And it allows you to begin to build a better, healthier, plant-based digestive ecosystem in your body. So fasting is extremely important to making any type of change, financially, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. We're going to have to learn to see the value in it by practicing it.
Right. So talk about some of the elements that like you mentioned, about why we should fast. Why would you say is some of the topics or reasons? You mentioned it about financial matters, and it could be for health matters. It could be for a spiritual matter. But why would you want to, or what could you say about why would it be?
I can give an experience. I can give some examples of experiences I've had with fasting. Like for us, we grew up in Detroit, and we went to Dunamis Outreach Ministries, and our Pastor Lane, was from a Church of God in Christ background, and he always talked about the importance of us knowing how to get in touch with God on our own. And so spiritually, I saw that a lot of the things that I was controlled by and I had been practicing, it took for me to fast in order for me to gain a different focus in my attention and my priority. And that's what fasting did for me spiritually. I think about with me, even from the perspective of my relationship with God, me getting saved, I had a lot of unforgiveness and resentment and anger. And Donna, who led me to Christ, she fasted on my behalf. She stood in the gap for me. She was praying for me, and she was, speaking to God on my behalf, not to make me do something, but more so to just cover me so that I could hear, so that my heart would be softened. And I even think about physically, in order for me to get off of the foods that were a problem for my health, I had to basically abstain from them. I couldn't have them in moderation. I had to totally break that relationship. So there's different facets of us needing to break free from something. And the only way we're going to break free from it is not through moderation, it's through abstinence.
Right. And those are some great reasons. And some of the other reasons I think about it as it pertains to myself is, when I started fasting in the beginning, it was challenging because you're basically removing, in my first fast, and you mentioned it already, about there's a lot of different fasting can do. And sometimes most people only think it's about eating,
right? That
you just stop eating. And while that may be true, and that's probably the most popular type of fasting, especially in our day and times that we're in right now, social media is probably a big one.
Yes.
And I think of fasting in a simpler, and maybe it's a simple term for me, is anything that takes up a lot of your time and takes up a lot of your attention, and that you could be devoting towards your relationship, towards your spiritual relationship with God. Those are the things that you should abstain from. And that's what the basic foundation of fasting is abstaining from something.
Right.
And go ahead.
And it's not really about beating yourself up or torture or willpower. It's really about submission. Mm-hmm. It's really about you saying, you know what? I realize that there's a God who created me. And if he thought fasting was so important that he made it a part of my everyday life, because he did. He didn't ask you if you wanted to fast. He made it a part of our life, because when we sleep every night and wake up, we have breakfast. And so if he thought it was that important, why don't I, just like I take my car in for a tune-up, why don't I bring my mind, my body, and my spirit in for a tune-up so that I can get refreshed and get healed and clear my mind? Because when you're fasting, your mental clarity is just, it's impeccable. Mm-hmm. And your health, and just you sleep better. I mean, everything is better. And so I think that when we begin to see fasting as more of a gift to us versus a discipline or a punishment, it will begin to benefit. It will serve us better than us seeing it as only something someone else has to tell you to do. It should be something that you should make the decision to do because you see the value in it.
And one of the other things that was important that I learned early about fasting is it's not important for other people to know that I'm fasting.
Right.
Because when you do that, as the Bible talks about, you kind of have already gotten your reward. It's not about people giving you some, I would say maybe spiritual accolades and pats on the back saying, wow, you're such a spiritual person, that you're fasting and those types of things. It's really about your own relationship and getting better about it, and God revealing things to you about you.
About you. And, one of the things I think about it, when you make fasting a part of your lifestyle, the people that are closest to you, like when you go on a complete fast, it's important as a wife and as a husband that you guys discuss that together, because a total fast is abstaining from everything. Sex, food, water, not water, sex, television, everything. And so that's something you'd have to consult with your spouse and talk to them about. But if you're in a workplace environment, and someone keeps, offering you something, and it's like, no, thank you, you'll find that when you are fasting, especially if you're out and you're working, that's when everyone's going to offer you. Everybody wants to bring you to lunch. Everybody wants to give you a snack.
That's when people bring the donuts.
Yeah, everybody wants to bring a donut. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm not eating right now.
Right.
Because... And it's an opportunity to witness. It's a difference between that happening. You just walk around, hey, I'm fasting. The people that you communicate with often, you should let them know, hey, I'm going to be spending some time with the Lord, so I'm not going to be available. I'm going to be out of pocket. Because what you don't want to do is to create unnecessary conflict by not communicating. And so I think that, part of it is just what are some of the practical ways that you can make fasting a part of your lifestyle, where it's not this weird, spooky, you got to go up on the top of a mountain and sit in a closet in the dark. It should be a part of your everyday life. And it's making, fasting and communion and reading and making all those things a priority, because it does. It helps you to grow. It helps you to develop. And it also helps you to die to those things that can begin to crowd out the things that are really important to you. Mm-hmm. Your relationships, your growth, even the goals you have. I think about when we're fasting, it's such a good way to get to hear, well, what does God want from me next?
Right.
What's the next step? And if you're ever struggling with which direction to go, or
a decision that you
you're trying to make,
that is a good time to practice fasting. It may not be for a spiritual awakening, so to speak. Sometimes it's good to do for real tangible decisions that you have to make. And when you do that, you'll be amazed at how clearly your options come to you, and things that you may be considering or things that you may not have even considered come to your mind. And I think that's a direct contribution, is because you were fasting and thinking about something other than that thing.
Right. But the way the book is designed is that the first 6 weeks of the book is designed for you to go through the book and for you to begin to grow and examine yourself. And then the second 6 weeks of the book is for you to become a facilitator. If it could be 6 weeks for you, or 12 weeks, or however many weeks it takes for you to feel comfortable enough. But the reason why it's designed that way is because after so long of you, once you've learned and you're practicing something, then it's time for you to share it with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why fasting is at the end of the first part of the book is because it's something that when you get into the practice of spending time with God and fasting, it becomes like, sometimes when I feel like I need a vacation, I was like, I need a fast. Because sometimes we just have so much going on. And so the way that the Freedom from Food 6-week curriculum is designed, it's really designed to help us really take that long journey inward and examine our heart and our why. And as we do that, fasting has a way of kind of sealing the deal and making it clear that, oh, that wasn't just my imagination. That really was God speaking to me. Because he'll speak to us in his still, small, quiet voice. But so many times there's so much noise and there's so many other distractions that we can kind of miss it. And that's why there's place in here to write things down. And that's where there's a time of fasting and there's a time prayer throughout the whole time. But just really examining your heart and then taking inventory of your heart and then being willing to do something different than what you were doing before.
So when it comes to fasting, would you say, from the curriculum that you've done and even just working with people on it, what is probably some of the big things that people have objections to fasting about that you come across?
the fact that they shouldn't fast. People have all these medical reasons why they can't fast, but the thing is that you fast every day anyway. And so one of the biggest things, well, I just can't fast. It's like, well, you do fast. You fast every day. And then it's like, oh.
What do you mean they fast every day?
When you go to bed at night, because at 9 o'clock your liver turns off. So everyone should stop eating by 9 o'clock. I don't care what time you go to bed. But by 9 o'clock, your liver shuts off, and that's the part of your body that digests your food. And so if you stop eating at 9 and then you go to bed, let's say, even if you go to bed at 1 or 2, but when you wake up, that whole time that you're sleeping, your body is fasting. You're not eating when you're sleeping. And that's why it's important to stop eating earlier so that your body's not digesting. Sometimes people can't sleep at night because they eat right before they go to bed. And so your body is still working to digest. So you want to give your body at least a couple of hours, depending on what you eat, 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed to sleep so you can rest. So we all fast every night from 6 to 8, let's say from 4 to 8 hours. For children, it's probably 10. But it just depends on, we all need that time of letting our bodies rest and restore and heal. And that's what happens when you're sleeping.
Right. So one of the things that we're actually talking about on this episode, we're talking about fasting. If you're just kind of jumping in with us on the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee, we're talking about some of the reasons why we should fast and the benefits that come out of it. But before we continue on with the conversation, got wisdom, got questions.
It's that time.
So during this time, we actually have 2 things that we're going to do a little bit different right now, and I'll give you the Got Wisdom that actually comes from the book, and I'll have you elaborate on what it means.
Okay.
And what it means is the Got Wisdom is feed what you want to grow and starve what you want to die. That's what you put in the book.
Yes.
Why don't you explain to our listeners what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that if there's something that you want more of, invest your time there. If there's something you want less of, spend less time there. So just like with a plant, if you want the plants that you want to grow, you water them. Mm-hmm. The plants that you don't water, what's going to happen? They're going to die. Right. And so we have to feed it with our time, our energy, our resources, our attention. That's how we feed something that we want to grow. We make investments in it. Mm-hmm. We actually are depositing. The things that you don't invest in, the things that you don't make deposits in, are going to deplete, dry up, and they're going to die.
Right. So that's a good interpretation and a good explanation of that Got Wisdom. So what do you have? You said you want to read a couple things from the book, specifically
as
about the Got Questions.
The question?
Go ahead.
So basically, the question is, and it's one of the questions in the book, and it's one of the questions we get a lot. What are 3 things that you can do to change the quality of your life? If you could only make 3 changes, mm-hmm. what would those 3 changes be? The first change would be to eliminate processed animal products and grains.
And so we're talking about tangible ways, actual day-to-day things that you can do right now as it pertains to a better health and a better quality of life. And read that one again. The
first one would be to eliminate processed animal products and grains.
And why is that important?
Because grains are for when you train. Rice, pasta, all those things are for when you're training. And unless you're extremely active, you don't need a high amount of those. And if you are going to eat them, you should eat them unprocessed, like oatmeal or brown rice or quinoa or black rice. You want to eat things in their least processed form. And again, grains are for when you train. And animal products, from our viewpoint, from what I believe and what I teach, is that those were designed to be luxuries that were eaten at special occasions. They were not supposed to be a part of the human diet's staple. It wasn't designed to be a staple.
When you say staple, are you talking about every single day? Every
day, every meal. It should not be eaten that way because our systems were not designed to digest that. Mm-hmm. So it just creates a lot of unnecessary sickness and digestion issue and mucus and cold and acne and arthritis.
Especially when we're going into this season of cold and flu and people get sick. So how does that pertain to ultra-processed stuff when you mean by that?
I'll give you some examples.
Okay.
Cheetos, Doritos, Skittles, those are ultra-processed foods that have been highly processed to the point that it wouldn't grow if you put it in the ground.
Right.
So whatever does not digest, whatever does not, if it doesn't spoil, it doesn't digest. Mm-hmm. So ultra-processed foods, hot dogs, things like that are the ultra-processed foods.
Okay, what's number 2?
And then number 2 would be these are habits to eliminate from your lifestyle to make your lifestyle better. The other one is to eliminate negative self-talk and conversations. Mm-hmm. Because the Bible says, let no corrupt communication come out of your mouth. So not just saying bad things about other people, but about being careful about what you say about yourself, and even the thoughts that come to your head about yourself. Because the Bible talks about taking every thought into captivity and bringing it into the submission and the obedience of Christ. So we have to do that in our thought life and our conversation about ourselves and about others.
Okay.
And then the third one is to eliminate artificial sweeteners and hydrogenated oils.
Elaborate on that one for people who may not be aware or as knowledgeable when it comes to some of those food terms.
Well, artificial sweeteners are sweeteners other than stevia and honey, and
which are natural.
Those are natural sweeteners,
like plants.
Right, they come from plants. And again, if you think about it, if most of the things that we eat that don't benefit us, and I tell my guests when it comes to eating sweeteners, if it does not have vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants in it, you don't want to eat it. So our sweeteners should come from fruits. It should come from honey, things that have benefits to our body, not just to satisfy our appetite, but just to benefit us. Mm-hmm. And then the hydrogenated oils are oils that are like in potato chips and fried foods and highly processed meats, processed foods. Those are the kind of things we want to kind of eliminate, because those things really do make a big difference in how you feel and your mood. And so when you incorporate more of the rainbow colored foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, seeds, eating purple and red and orange and green, it really makes you feel better. And so that's why those were not just physical things, but there's also some emotional things you have to do as well to make your lifestyle better.
Cool. So those are a couple things that it's a little bit different than our normal Got Questions, but so we actually not answering questions, we're giving information.
Yeah.
So, but if you ever want to send in Got Wisdom and Got Wisdom, Got Question, you can reach us at the website at richrelationshipsus.com or through our Gmail account
at richrelationshipsus@gmail.com.
Got Wisdom, Got Questions. Gil and Renee Beaver's over 30-year relationship is the genesis for the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is designed to empower individuals with the tools, principles, and the community needed to unpack ourselves, our past, and our preconceived notions associated with relationships.
Let's get empty and grow together so that our lives will be filled with love and healthy, rich relationships. Now let's go into our show.
So we're talking about a very challenging topic.
Why is it challenging?
Well, it's challenging when we're talking about fasting for those who are already listening. And the fasting, it should be something that kind of challenges you and make you think about fasting from a food perspective.
Right.
But also from maybe I need to give up some TV and some movies. Maybe I need to give up some of my hobbies and some of the things that I really enjoy doing in my leisure time, and then substitute it for a time of spiritual journeying, whether it's reading your Bible, praying, worship music, all those things. And even if you
serving someone.
And I was getting ready to say, even if you don't claim to be a Christian or align yourself with that faith, there's still a benefit to it from a spiritual perspective.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people will just define themselves as being spiritual, awakening spirituality, to where you still are going to benefit from some of the practices, whether, like you just described, helping someone else.
Right. Taking the focus off of serving ourselves and serving others.
Right.
And one of the reasons why that's in the book is because I know personally that normally when we have a problem with our appetites, that's not something somebody else can fix. The only way you can get control, and that's one of the reasons why I don't agree when people say, oh, you need to eat 5 small meals a day. only if you've never had a problem with food addiction and serial dieting.
Right.
For a person who struggled with food addiction and serial dieting, you should only eat when you're hungry.
Right. Or even people who are in that context that you were just talking about. If you're meal prepping because you're training, like you mentioned earlier about training because you're into ultra athletics or anything like that, then yeah, you have to keep.
But if you're a
going.
couch potato,
right,
or if you're sitting behind a desk, or if you have a very sedentary lifestyle,
right,
we have to make sure that the amount of foods. I was riding today with a friend, and we were going out and we were talking about the land and how her grandparents ate, what they ate and what they did. But our grandparents worked.
The farms, and
worked
the
farms, and they worked field, and they grew everything, and everything was natural, and they still didn't eat it the way we do. They still did it. If they killed an animal to eat it, it lasted them the whole year.
Or a long time.
And it lasts their whole family. And
right.
so we have to stop using the excuse that my grandmother ate it as a way to say that we should still be doing it. Because unless you did what they were doing, then we can't use the same regiment that they practice without the same amount of endurance and exercise and physical activity.
Because they were probably getting up at
the
crack of dawn and going out and working and farming or doing those types of things or going to work early. And so they had to have the energy to do those things for long periods of time.
Right.
So what we're talking about, and to kind of go backwards a little bit about fasting is really an individual matter that you really have to really focus on and deal with. And it's a real humbling experience as well, because you'll be starting to see things about yourself. And that's what it's really all about, is the growth between you and your spiritual self and with your God and with God, about the things that are, it could be bondage.
Yeah.
It could be sicknesses. It could be things that you're being challenged with that can be a hindrance or a block for you. So that's one of the things, one of the benefits that fasting will bring to your life and bring to you.
And especially if you're, like for me, like I said, I dieted my whole life. Mm-hmm. I mean, when people ask me, well, how did you do it? How did you lose weight? I always say prayer, fasting, and a plant-based lifestyle. Because even with eating a plant-based lifestyle, your appetites can still be out of control. You still could have a very unhealthy place in your heart for food. And so what fasting does is it helps you to realize that whether I eat animal products or whether I eat plant-based, I still have to be in subjection to God's plan and not my appetites.
Right. So even when it comes to fasting, we talked about it during this episode about how it being a personal journey and a personal matter that you're doing. But fasting can also be about for other people.
Yeah. Standing in the gap.
You mentioned earlier that how Donna did that with you.
Yeah. And I think that's something we really need to be aware of. We constantly complain about what's going on in our society and our culture and in the world around us. Well, a lot of times I remember talking to God about things that were going on and I'm like, well, what's going on and why aren't you? And there's a song that talks about that. It's like, He created us. Mm-hmm. The things that I see, why
don't you do something
about it? And so the things, and I always say, the things that bother you and get under your skin are the things that God created you to be the solution to.
Right.
So we should bring solutions to situations rather than just conversation about it. We should be talking to the Lord about it, and we should be doing something about it. And I think that just like it's impossible to hate someone and pray for them, fasting has a way of, like you said, it humbles you. It disconnects you from, and there is a time when you fast that you do find your emotions more heightened. And in the beginning, you do find yourself a little bit more irritable and frustrated and angry. It's just like boiling water. Things start to come up to the surface. And once everything is boiled out, then you begin to feel better and you feel energized. So it is it's a roller coaster. Fasting is a roller coaster. And
I'll give you a practical one from my own personal fasting journey is caffeine. I gave up coffee, because I would have to say I was addicted to coffee.
Yeah.
To where it's like, even though it's a normal routine, it's addicted to the caffeine.
Right.
It's a normal routine to where you get up in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, and you carry on with your normal routine. When you make a conscious effort and a conscious choice to abstain, which is what we're talking about, from something, so you can hear and get more clarity. I think of it as a tool as well, fasting as a tool to where I want to hear what God has for me to do from a personal matter, or even from people that I come across in a daily life that he makes me aware of, just like you just said. When you see things going on around you, he could be showing you that for a reason, for you to be there. Sometimes it's going to be a hands-on approach, and sometimes it's going to be one to just, as you put it, stand in the gap and be there for a point of solution.
Yeah, because it's so easy as humans to see. We talked about being an autobiographical listener. We can not only listen autobiographically, we could see things autobiographically, where we see everything through the scope and through the lens of our eyes and our heart. And God is like, I need you to see things through my eyes. I need you to see things through my scope. And to me, if I had to describe what fasting does, it's like one of the things on Audacity when we're adjusting everything. There's a
doing the edits for the show.
Yeah, for the editing for the show. One of the files says to amplify. I believe that when we fast, it amplifies our spiritual awareness, it amplifies our humility, it amplifies all the things that we need to be productive and to be able to overcome our human nature and our society and our culture and our thoughts and our ideas and our views. And to me, that's what fasting has become a very valuable part of how I keep Renee in check.
Right.
Because she can be a trip without all the tools that God has provided to keep us. Romans 12 says, present yourself to God a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, which is our reasonable act of service. Well, fasting helps us to be able to die.
Right.
And so it's not just about this. It is the spiritual part of it. That's the most important part of it. But there are psychological benefits. There are emotional benefits, there's financial benefits, there's health benefits. And so even if you say, well, I don't believe in God and I don't believe in Jesus and I don't believe in this whole God thing, when you are going to have some labs done, your doctor tells you to fast.
Right. You're still practicing it.
Yeah. So there are certain things there's lots of things we don't agree on, but fasting is universal and it's been going on since biblical times. And every culture has some form of fasting even for detoxification purposes. After you fast for about when everybody's doing this keto, when you fast after 4 days, your body is in ketosis. So the people who do keto, they didn't invent that. That is something that God created as a way to protect us and to heal our bodies. But it wasn't designed to be for it to be a state you stay in. Ketosis is something you're supposed to go through and not live in all the time.
And that's kind of what fasting helps you to do, not live in a state of decay.
Yes.
And which is really what it's really all about.
Yeah.
So as we've been talking about fasting, we can keep going, but I know it goes by so fast.
It does.
The time does.
It does.
So is there anything you want to finish with for this week on this episode? Because we will not have an episode next week because it's the holiday. So we're going to take next week off and we'll be back that first week in December. I just want to say that at the end. So you go listen to one of the other episodes.
Yeah, we have we have 28 episodes, guys.
That you can review.
And thank you for being a part of our community and for listening and for sharing. If I had to say any one thing, I hope that this episode, this month of talking about freedom from food, will serve you well, and that you will be well equipped to sit at the table with we have some other episodes about difficult family and conflict resolution. So we are hoping that this Thanksgiving is going to be different, that this Christmas is going to be different, because you have the tools through the Rich Relationship Podcast to overcome life's challenges. And the essence of the human experience is all designed for us to do it together and to have the tools we need and to have the support we need. And so I hope that this has helped you. I hope that you're wiser and that you will be stronger to overcome all the things that have controlled you in the past. And so I just hope that you would share this episode, our podcast, and continue to be a part of our community so we can grow together.
And because we're stronger together,
let's grow.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. We love you all.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your investment in time. Remember to subscribe to the show and hit the notification icon to be notified when new episodes are posted on the podcast platform that you're listening from.
Or you can always find us on our website at richrelationshipsus.com or our YouTube channel, Rich Relationships with Gil and Renee. If you found this podcast helpful or you think it could help someone that you know and care about, please pass it along and share it with them.
And also, you can always send your questions and comments to richrelationships.us@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast, and the new episodes are going to be posted on Monday by 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.